Since the illegal 1846 Mexican-American War that President Lincoln characterized as President Polk's desire for, quote, military glory, that attractive rainbow that rises in the shower of blood, end of quote, Mexicans have become illegal aliens in their own land. In the 1980s, under President Ronald Reagan, Central America became a bloodbath with his attempt at suppressing revolutionary movements against brutal military dictatorships the U.S. funded and supported since 1927 in Nicaragua, 1931 in El Salvador, 1954 in Guatemala, and the 1980s in Honduras. U.S. exploitation, economic policies like NAFTA, and support of corrupt Mexican governments created millions of economic refugees to the U.S. The U.S. political, economic, and military aid of brutal Guatemalan, El Salvadoran, and Honduran governments has led to thousands of unaccompanied children, women with their children, and families fleeing poverty and violence. Mattie Conway of CISPES discusses how the Central American Security and Prosperity Conference is another machinations of U.S. pitiless persecution of these people as refugees.
I'm here with CISPES because we want to talk about the current situation in Mexico and Central America, where the U.S. is giving the Mexican government $100 million a year to detain and deport Central American migrants, and forcing Central American countries to militarize their borders by holding aid hostage. Since 2016, the U.S. has been providing Central America with what they call the Alliance for Prosperity, which is an aid package, which is really mostly military aid, which is concerning in itself. But even more concerning is that in order to receive this aid, the countries have to militarize their borders, which is a violation of their sovereignty, which is a violation of migrant rights, which is a violation of contracts between the countries that provide people with the freedom of movement. And now the Trump administration wants to make the situation even worse by having the Mexican police and military train their Central American counterparts. And so in a few days, on June 12th through 14th, the Trump administration and the Mexican government are co-hosting the Central American Security and Prosperity Conference, which we're really concerned about, because in this conference they are planning to increase the cooperation between Mexican and Central American police and military forces, which are currently committing human rights atrocities, especially in Mexico and Honduras. So Congressman Lowenthal from Long Beach, we approached him a couple months ago with concern about this situation, and particularly this conference, and he's thankfully taken the initiative to write a Dear Colleague letter aimed at the State Department, raising concerns about the conference and about the fact that it seems that the purpose of the conference is to further militarize the Mexico-Guatemala border region, and so calling on the officials at the conference to put human rights first, which is something we have not seen from either the U.S. or Mexican or Guatemalan governments thus far. One of the issues that we're seeing is that while the Mexican and Guatemalan immigration officials don't carry weapons, they're moving in units with combined police and military, and the police and military are looking at refugees as the enemy and treating them as the enemy instead of as refugees, as people who are escaping severe violence and poverty, and that's really concerning. Another thing that we're really trying to have come to light is that the U.S. policies are the root causes of migration. In the 1980s, the U.S. was supporting the militaries in Central America that were massacring people en masse. And in the 1990s, when those wars ended, the U.S. was pushing these free trade agreements, NAFTA in Mexico, CAFTA in Central America, and pushing neoliberalism. In El Salvador, the U.S. forced the Salvadoran people to lose their national currency and switch to the dollar. And these neoliberal policies are really what have been at the root of making poverty much, much worse in the region. And lately, what the U.S. has been doing is forcing Central American governments to turn their public resources over to private companies and further privatize what they have left. And so unionized workers are losing their jobs, and the situation is only getting worse. And so we think that in order to really get at the root causes of migration, the solution is not to create walls or to create walls of military and police officials. The solution is to not support neoliberal policies and not support the militarization of the region. And we've been really happy to see that the Salvadoran government, with especially the FMLN administration, the FMLN administration in El Salvador has been changing the dynamic and has been pushing for policies that aren't neoliberal policies. And so forced migration of Salvadorans has actually gone down, whereas Hondurans and Guatemalans have gone up. And this is because kids now have a right to milk and a uniform. They no longer have to pay quotas at the hospital. Unionized workers have rights. Some of the lowest paid workers have doubled their salary in the last year. They've banned metallic mining. And so we see these solutions as what's going to stop forced migration. And we know that our government, the U.S. government, is not supporting those solutions. They're not supporting the Salvadoran government. The funds, the so-called development funds, are going into private companies' hands or into NGOs created by the U.S., not the real solutions that the Salvadoran government knows. And we know that people have the resources within themselves to solve their own social problems, and what they need is for the U.S. to stop telling them what to do so that they can enact those solutions.
Por eso es que cuando canto, canto lo que el pueblo siente. Soy del pueblo, pueblo soy, y a donde me lleve el pueblo voy.
Como cantar es mi oficio,
yo canto el esfuerzo duro de construir el futuro con alegre sacrificio. Soy del pueblo, pueblo soy, y a donde me lleve el pueblo voy.